US President Donald Trump is set to host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today as tensions rise over Iran's nuclear program. Mr. Netanyahu is expected to push for a tougher US stance on Iran's uranium enrichment, ballistic missile program, and support for proxy groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah. Ahead of the meeting, Mr. Trump said he is considering deploying a second aircraft carrier strike group to the Middle East, warning that the US could take very tough action if diplomacy fails. And for more on this, we're joined by Nick Harper, reporting live for CNA from Washington, D.C., and Blake Sifton, joining us live from Tel Aviv. Now, Blake, let's start with you. We understand that Prime Minister Netanyahu will press President Trump for a much tougher stance on Iran. What exactly is he hoping to secure from Washington?
Good evening. Before leaving for Washington, Prime Minister Netanyahu said that he would present President Trump with Israel's principles on the Iran negotiations. Israel is very concerned that the United States could pursue a more narrow nuclear deal with Tehran that doesn't include limits on Iran's ballistic missile production or support for proxy forces like Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen. And Prime Minister Netanyahu is expected to urge President Trump to widen the scope of these negotiations to include these issues. Now, Israel does want an end to Iran's uranium enrichment, and they want all of their enriched uranium to be taken out of the country, but they view Iran's ballistic missile program as an existential threat. During the 12-day war with Israel in June, Iran fired some 550 ballistic missiles. Around 50 of those successfully evaded Israeli and American air defenses and caused widespread destruction in Israeli cities. And while there's very little suggestion that Iran has worked to repair their nuclear program following that war in June, it is widely reported that they have repaired their ballistic missile production facilities, and they may even have fully replenished their arsenal of ballistic missiles. Another issue is that the rate at which they're producing those missiles may be outpacing the production of American and Israeli interceptor missiles that were used in the war in June. And that could mean that in any future conflict with Iran, it could be harder to shoot down their missiles. Israel is expected to push the United States, to push President Trump to include in these negotiations limits on Iran's ballistic missile production, as well as limits on their range. But Iran has repeatedly and emphatically rejected this. They have said that their missiles are for defense and that they are a non-negotiable red line.
Blake, thank you for that update. Now let's go over to Nick now. How seriously should we take President Trump's comments about sending a second carrier strike group? Is this just posturing, leverage in negotiations, or are we looking at very serious preparation for a possible escalation?
Well, I have to be honest, with Donald Trump, it's very difficult to know. But what we do know is that threats are a common tactic of the US president. He likes to exert pressure as a way to try and get what he wants. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Remember, we saw similar threats before the first round of talks in Amman on Friday. He warned then that if the talks didn't go well, he might consider military action. So here we are again, more threats to put pressure on Tehran, but also perhaps to reassure Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, showing that he is ready and prepared to act against Iran if necessary. Now, he made these comments in an interview with Axios, saying, we have an armada that is heading there and another one might be going. He also said that he is thinking about sending a second aircraft carrier strike group to the region. The US already has the USS Abraham Lincoln and its strike group, including fighter jets and Tomahawk missiles there. Trump also told Axios, either we will make a deal or we will have to do something very tough like last time, referring there to the strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities last year that Blake also referred to. Now, sending a second carrier strike group would certainly be seen as an escalation, but the US president for now at least appears to be pushing for the path of diplomacy rather than military action. He has said that he hopes that the second round of talks with Iran will take place sometime next week, and also bear in mind the timing of all of this. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit coming just ahead of the first full meeting of Donald Trump's Board of Peace. That's happening here in Washington, D.C. next week. So from an optics perspective, attacking Iran now when he's preparing to push this idea of peace, those two things don't quite align. The president knows that, and he knows why. Potentially this Iran maneuver really is more about threatening Tehran rather than being an actual concrete plan.
Nick, thank you for that report. That was Nick Harper in Washington, D.C. and Blake Sifton in Tel Aviv, reporting live for CNA.